Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out ProRevenge. Story 1. Never bully your insurance company or you lose your franchise. Hello all. Excuse any poor grammar or spelling, I'm on mobile. TLDR at bottom. Edit. Nobody has permission to share this story on other platforms. I have already seen this shared without permission, so please do not share it. This story comes from a friend of mine, Sarah, and has been building for almost 5 years until it all came crashing down over the last week. A few things to note before I get into it. Sarah works at an insurance company, dealing with a massive nationwide delivery company. Her company insures all the delivery trucks. Over the years, Sarah had seen her fair share of anger from callers. Mostly justified, or people letting off steam at the anonymous voice on the other end of the phone. She's learned not to take it personal. She absolutely despises the owner of one particular franchised depot, Dick. On to the story. We start in 2016. Dick is the franchisee of a vehicle depot for delivery company. Meaning he's sort of an owner, but the company CEO could take away his ownership if they feel like it. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but as far as I understand it's a fairly standard franchise contract, so anyone who knows about these things should have a rough idea of what Dick has to do. Dick calls in for the first time, to talk to Sarah about a claim one of his drivers is making. Something simple, reversed into a wall, minimal damage, but claiming to get the vehicle repaired. Dick starts ranting and screaming about how dare his driver be expected to pay an excess, standard. Sarah has dealt with people like this all her career, so she just deals with it as she always does. And so it continues for 2 years, with Dick bullying and abusing any call handler when he calls about a claim. It's annoying, and plenty of people have been brought to tears by it, but they can't stop serving him because he is responsible for dealing with his franchise's claims. It's now 2018, and Dick decides to get himself arrested. To give you an idea of just how stupid this man is. One of his drivers had been in a really bad accident. Nobody was seriously hurt, but the van was badly damaged. So while it was being repaired, Sarah organized for a hire van. Dick goes to the hire company to collect the van, and he's asked to make a one payment by debit/credit card to secure the vehicle. I'm pretty sure it's so the hire company can just charge it for any damage caused while on hire, and is an industry standard in my country. Dick doesn't like this. He argues with the hire company. He threatens to dump the hire vehicle once he's finished with it. Finally, he punches the poor bloke working front desk. As previously stated, Dick gets arrested. Fast forward to a few months ago. Everyone is working from home. Yay, lockdown, and most people understand this. Everyone except Dick. He must be having a particularly bad day, because his tantrum about how useless Sarah and her company is descends into personal insults. Sarah, having an equally bad day, decides that now is the moment she will get revenge on this guy for everything he has put every claim handler through. So she requests a copy of the recording of the call. All calls recorded for safety, complaints, and calling people out on their bullshit. She then sends this recording to 3 people. Her manager, saying she refuses to speak to Dick due to his abusive behavior. The rest of the team agree, and suddenly there is not a single claims handler willing to speak to this man. Manager says he will sort something. Dick's boss, simply stating that his behavior is unacceptable, and the next time he tries to speak to someone at insurance company that way, they will end the call. Every listed CEO or board member of Dick's company. She wanted all of them to know just how vile this man was. Then, today, she gets the call she's been waiting for. A representative of delivery company has called, wanting to apologize for everything Dick put her and her team through. He also gives the best news. Dick has been downgraded from franchise owner to a lowly delivery driver. His lovely pay package, benefits, annual bonus, and company-funded car, a brand new Merc, for anyone interested, have all been taken away. He now earns a little over minimum wage, 60-hour weeks to pay his bills, with his reputation in tatters. If he doesn't meet the standard for delivery drivers within the next 3 months, he'll be fired. Sarah also learned from someone she knows in the company that his wife is divorcing him, because he told her she needs to get a job or they'll lose the house thanks to his sudden drop in income. Sarah hasn't yet met the new franchisee, but if I know her, she'll make it clear that she's the one who ruined Dick's life, and she isn't afraid to do it again if the new guy doesn't treat her and her colleagues with respect. Lesson: don't be a dick to call center employees. TLDR, Dick abuses call center staff for 4 years, loses big job, nice car, and wife. Edit. First, thank you all for liking, and especially to those of you who have given rewards. Second, I want to emphasize for those who have commented on the franchise part of things, I have a very limited knowledge on how this works. As far as me and Sarah know, Dick started as an employee of this place, then got the money to buy the franchise. There's something in the contracts that allows the company to take away his franchise, and since he was formerly a driver he was given that job back on probation. Third, for the person who pointed out the description of lowly delivery driver, I should have made this more clear. This is in no way demeaning the job these wonderful people do, it's how Dick always described the position when he called. Story 2. Bag of nails. I am a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around for my trade as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I have had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I am working in that area in the future, but this particular landlord got my back up so badly I was not just going to just walk away. I had managed to get myself onto a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium, so decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I know I was going to be working on it for a while, and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and meet with him later that day. He seemed okay, went to view the house, paid him the deposit, cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems, always had the rent paid into his bank account on time and fixed any small problems that might crop with the house myself without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, only ever spoke to him twice on the phone after there was an issue with the heating that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer round the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went round to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month, and to let him know that I was happy for him to come round to inspect the house before I moved out so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned the keys. He never came round while I was in to inspect the house, and so I assumed that he had come round and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So on the day I moved out, I went around the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit?" "The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit," I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done on the house, it was in a better state now than when I have moved into it. His response was to step forward and get right up into my face and say, "You're not getting it back, so FK off," and he then gave me a shove which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling on my arse. Now I am what you would class as average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height-wise and obviously spent some time down the gym, and the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us that the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this twat quickly and painfully. After the first step through, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue, so I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, said okay bye to my now ex-landlord and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had had a spare back door key cut when I had lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the keys so I could still get back in. So later that evening I let myself back in and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, architrave, and floorboards, being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood flooring and carpets. I then left everything in nice neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive when I decided I wanted to rub a little more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails and box of wood screws out of the back of my van and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best, so I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and told her to tell her boss you will be needing these, and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat in a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages which left me chuckling to myself. Edit. I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're f***ing funny leaving me nails and screws?" I responded yes. Story 3. Got my freshman dorm leader fired a year after he called the cops on me. I've never really posted anything before, but I have a funny revenge/karma story that my friends have always enjoyed. I first got to college my freshman year and met the dorm leader, RA at most schools. Like most colleges, the dorm leader was the upperclassman that lived in the dorms and monitored the freshman halls. My dorm leader's name was Julio, fake name BTW, and at first, he seemed like a nice dude that minded his own business. He talked about how he would stay out of everyone's business if we would stay out of his. Also, he tried to be the cool dorm leader and always mentioned to me about how he drank tons of alcohol his freshman year in the dorms. He gave off the impression he really didn't care if we ever drank in our dorm rooms, but to just keep it on the low if we did. I really didn't drink much at all, but I appreciated the fact he seemed pretty normal and didn't try to rat on kids. During the last week of October of my freshman year of college, I had one of the hardest weeks of my academic career. I was a biochemistry major taking some pretty tough classes and had 3 exams that week. At the end of the week, a friend I had recently made down the hall invited me to his dorm room to watch an upcoming NBA game. As we were watching the game, he had a bottle of vodka and gave some to the guys in the dorm. Being a naive and stupid freshman kid just trying to make some friends, I took one shot of vodka and continued to watch the game. As we're watching the game, one of the guys in the dorm spills a bottle of soda and rushes to the bathroom to grab some paper towels. As he walks out of the dorm room, Julio walked by and noticed the bottle of vodka. He laughed and said something of the sorts of, "I remember when I was a freshman, haha, just try and keep it down." We thanked him and told him to have a good night. It seemed like a normal conversation and nothing out of the ordinary. 30 minutes later we hear a knock on the door and 2 policemen showed up with breathalyzers. They told us they had received a complaint from Julio about underage drinking and a party being thrown in the dorm room. Remember, it was 3 guys watching a Lakers game on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. I ended up getting a minor in consumption charge for blowing a .02, had to do 20 hours community service, a reflection journal, and appear to the Judicial Affairs Center at my college about my supposed drinking problem. I'm not blaming the officer for giving me a ticket, but I was pretty upset that Julio, who always talked about getting shit-faced freshman year in the dorm, called the police right after he essentially gave us the okay for the night. A few weeks later I see Julio and straight up asked him why he decided to rat me out. Specifically, I asked why he didn't just tell me to head back to my dorm if he had a problem with the alcohol instead of calling the police right after our conversation. He responds word for word with, "You made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." After that incident, I never really talked to him, but he always tried to be buddy-buddy when he saw me in the hallway. Anyway, I eventually leave the dorms and move off campus for my sophomore year. I had decided to rush a fraternity my freshman year and ended up meeting some really nice guys. I have never been the fraternity type, but I went to a smaller college where fraternities are a lot different than most places. During the second semester of my sophomore year, my fraternity was taking a new pledge class. One day I received a text from Julio saying one of the guys pledging your fraternity has been caught dealing alcohol to another freshman in the dorms. I thought I would let you know. Turns out Julio was the dorm leader for a freshman pledging my fraternity and ratted him out to judicial affairs as well. Thinking the term dealing alcohol was the lamest/funniest thing I have ever heard, I sent that to our fraternity group me and everyone laughed about it. About a week later, that kid pledging our fraternity came up to me asking about the message I received from Julio. Essentially, a pretty similar thing happened to him like what happened to me. Julio found out he had given another kid in the dorm a bottle of wine and reported it to the police. This kid ended up getting a minor in possession and had to speak with judicial affairs. This is where the story gets hilarious. In his meeting with judicial affairs, the kid pledging our fraternity told the judicial affairs guy that his dorm leader, Julio was now a senior at this point, had texted me about the charges pending against him. Apparently, it's a huge violation to discuss pending charges against a freshman in your dorm to a third party. The judicial affairs guy told him that if he could prove Julio was discussing this charge with a third party, aka me, he would receive severe sanctions. Basically, if I sent that text to the judicial affairs people, Julio would be in a shitload of trouble, so I sent the text that night to the judicial affairs people. After that, I didn't hear anything about what happened to Julio and had honestly forgotten about it. However, nearing the end of the school year in my sophomore year, I saw Julio at the dining hall and came up to speak to me. He tells me a story about how he knows I was the one that ratted him to judicial affairs, how he ended up getting fired from his dorm leader position, lost the scholarship money his dorm leader job provided him, and overall how shitty his life has been since he got fired. After going through his entire sob story, he asked me, "Why did you do that? This could have been handled completely differently. I didn't have to get fired and I could have kept my scholarship money." I look at him dead in the eye for what seemed like 30 seconds and say, "Julio, you made a decision and had to suffer the consequences of that decision." TLDR, my RA made it seem like it'd be okay to drink in the dorms but then called the cops on us. I then used the same one-liner on him a year later when I got him fired for violating school policy. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.